It's intermission time, folks. So hurry, hurry, hurry. Step right over to our refreshment center for the most extravagant array of refreshment goodies ever assembled under one roof. Enjoy breathtaking, mouth-watering goodies. Everything from a snack to a delicious full meal. At our refreshment center, you'll find a large variety of goodies to satisfy your hunger, your thirst, or your sweet tooth. So hurry, hurry, hurry. Visit our refreshment center now. The show starts in 10 minutes.
Hello and welcome to Cleveland Classic Cinema. Today's movie is 1954's Suddenly, directed by Lewis Allen. Friday, November 22nd, 1963 is a day I'll remember for the rest of my life. First of all, it's my birthday, and secondly, it was the day President Kennedy was assassinated. I was in the first grade in Catholic school, and we had this quaint little tradition where if it was your birthday, you passed candy out to all the other kids in your class. I've pondered this tradition quite a bit since then. I don't know if it still holds today, but it never quite made sense to me that I was the one who handed out candy to everyone on my birthday. Anyway, I was passing it out when this 8th grader walked in and handed my teacher, Miss Kleem, a note. She read it and buried her face in her hands as the kids somberly left the classroom. We were all pretty much paralyzed, me standing there with my hand in the bag, gaping at the teacher for what seemed like an hour before she choked out, "The president's been shot." I can't really remember exactly how I felt when I heard that. I do remember feeling pretty numb and kind of lost. The thing you have to know is that back in 1963, America was still riding the crest of the wave that started towards shore at the end of World War II. And we were pretty much the kings of the world at that time. Or at least that's how we felt. The country had just barely dodged the bullet of having Richard Nixon as president, and we had a young, handsome, charismatic war hero running the country. His wife was beautiful and charming, his kids were adorable, and the media had dubbed the whole thing Camelot, after the fantasy of a Broadway show popular at that time. That was when the Kennedy family became the closest thing to royalty this country ever had. For some reason, everyone still believes that having some kind of royal blood in your veins makes you better than everyone else. Although, as time is borne out, what kind of blood runs through you doesn't mean a damn thing. You're still human and just as apt to become corrupt as the next person. When I think of people I'm in awe of for whatever reason, I remember what my grandfather used to say. They butter their bread and wipe their butts with the same hand. Grandpa was a pretty down-to-earth guy. The decade of the 60s really started that day. I know a fair amount of old hippies that talk about the 60s as if it were the greatest decade this country ever had, but it wasn't. Take it from someone who lived through it. That was a scary time. I don't remember much about the Cuban Missile Crisis. I was too young to understand what was going on when it went down, but I remember the tension and fear in the air. We came out of that one okay, but the Kennedy assassination, that was something else. It seemed like overnight the entire country changed. Riots in the streets, escalation in Vietnam, violence everywhere you looked. You didn't know if your older brother was going to get drafted and get his head blown off 1,000 miles away, if your father would get caught in a race riot on the way home from work, if some crazy hippie with an agenda even he didn't understand was going to blow something up. It was just crazy. Like everything else, though, you got used to it after a while, and maybe that was the scariest thing of all. The fact that you could adjust to the insanity that seemed to be everywhere around you, that after a while it was just business as usual, that you came to accept it as a part of everyday life. There was a rumor going around that another Frank Sinatra movie, The Manchurian Candidate, was pulled from circulation after the Kennedy assassination because of its subject matter. And when it was re-released in the 80s, I went to see it and walked out of the theater satisfied but a bit confused because I couldn't figure out what the hell that movie had to do with what happened in 1963. I didn't know anything about Suddenly other than it was a movie featuring Frank Sinatra, and it was probably some kind of film noir. I wasn't interested in it, but when Henry and I were choosing the movies to show this season, we both chose Suddenly on the off chance that it would be a good film and thus balance the crap to watchable ratio on this show, if you consider 7-to-1 or so a balance. After watching the movie and doing research on it, I found out that this is the movie Sinatra had pulled out of distribution, and it made a lot more sense. Suddenly is a small town in California where nothing much happens anymore. At the beginning of the film, one of the characters jokes that the town fathers are thinking of changing the name of the town to Gradually. After being introduced to the chief of police and the widow he's pursuing, the news comes in that the president is going to be coming suddenly via train, departing from the station to continue on to a Camp David-like retreat to rest. The state police and the Secret Service swoop on the town to set up security. Someone else comes to town as well, and they're very interested in getting a place with a good view of the train station. I'll leave the description of the plot there so as not to spoil anything, but I will tell you this. Suddenly is a pretty good movie, at least by the standards of this show. Sterling Hayden was born Sterling Aurelia Walter on March 26, 1916 in Upper Montclair, New Jersey. He appeared in 62 movies over the course of his career, although he despised being an actor. He was adopted by his stepfather, James Hayden, and renamed Sterling Walter Hayden. He ran away from home at the age of 17 and went to sea, working as a ship's boy, doryman, and fireman on various vessels before getting his first command at the age of 19. He sailed around the world several times, becoming well known as an excellent captain, then, at the urging of friends, met with a producer who signed him to a contract with Paramount Pictures. He married his first leading lady, Madeline Carroll, and quit movies before Pearl Harbor to work for the Office of Strategic Services. While serving in the Marines in World War II, he ran guns to Yugoslavian partisans and parachuted into Croatia, where he operated a fishing boat off the coast, picking up downed Allied pilots and running supplies. Awarded a Silver Star and a citation from Tito of Yugoslavia, he returned to Hollywood to continue acting. He remembered, incredible really, how I got away with it, parlaying 9 years at sea into 2 decades of posturing. He was briefly a member of the Communist Party after his activities in the war, and cooperated with the House Un-American Activities Committee during the 50s, something he despised himself for doing the rest of his life. After appearing as Captain McCluskey in The Godfather, he was offered the role of Quint in Jaws but couldn't take it due to tax problems. He published 2 books, an autobiography called Wanderer and a novel called Voyage, both of which won praise from critics. He was married 5 times, 3 times to the same woman. He died of cancer on May 23, 1986 in Sausalito, California. Frank Sinatra was born December 12, 1915 in Hoboken, New Jersey. He appeared in 60 movies and countless TV shows over the course of his long career, starting as a solo singer, lugging his own PA system along with him to gigs at the dives in New Jersey, eventually moving on to singing with Harry James and Tommy Dorsey. He went solo again in 1942, finding fame as the King of the Bobby Soxers. It was rumored that his brilliant manager, George Evans, hired several shills at each of his early performances to scream and faint when he began singing, and fame followed soon after. Anyone who watches Warner Brothers cartoons is very familiar with this stage of his career, as the directors and writers lampooned him mercilessly. I can't tell you how many classic cartoons feature an emaciated-looking Sinatra crooning, while just about everyone on screen screams and faints, swooning, "Frankie." His career was almost destroyed when he suffered a vocal cord hemorrhage and lost his singing voice. He had to beg for the role of Maggio in From Here to Eternity, but eventually got it. And no, it wasn't because the producer woke up with a horse's head in his bed. The role reinvigorated his career, and he eventually recovered his voice. It was even better than it was before, with a richness and tone that has been unequaled since. He had a group of close friends, including Dean Martin, Sammy Davis Jr., and Joey Bishop, that was dubbed the Rat Pack, and performed all over the country, but mainly in Las Vegas. He was never very good at telling a joke or coming up with snappy retorts, so his fellow Rat Packers, mainly Dean Martin, who had an incredible sense of humor, came up with jokes for him to use during their performances. He was eventually dubbed the chairman of the board, a nickname that confused him since people would walk up and ask him, "What are you chairman of the board of?" and he didn't have an answer. He could be incredibly kind and thoughtful one moment and angry and violent the next, leading some to suspect he was bipolar. According to Mia Farrow's biography, he offered to have Woody Allen's legs broken when he discovered Allen was having an affair with Soon Yi, his adopted daughter, but Mia turned the offer down. He also mentored Harry Connick Jr., calling him the Kid. Frank Sinatra died on May 14, 1998 in Los Angeles, California. Nancy Gates, who plays Ellen Benson, was born on February 1, 1926 in Dallas, Texas. She appeared in 37 movies, starting with an uncredited role in 1946 as the Magnificent Ambersons, and made 69 TV appearances. Her character in Suddenly is one of those women who are rabidly anti-gun and overly protective of her young son, and it reminds me quite a bit of some people this day who insist on, in the words of Sterling Hayden Sheriff Todd Shaw, wrapping their kids in cellophane to protect them from the harsh realities of life. She's so rabid about it, in fact, that while watching the film, I felt like she needed a knock upside the head to set her straight. A metaphorical knock upside the head, of course. I'm going to go off on a bit of a rant here, but it's not a long one, so don't reach for the remote just yet. While I agree that children should be shielded from the harsher realities of life somewhat, doing it to the point where they never experience disappointment or failure or prejudice is doing them and the country a great disservice, because I feel it fosters a belief that the world will always treat them fairly and protect them from being hurt or disappointed, and that's just not true. The end effect of this kind of mollycoddling is going to be a generation of whiny wussies, and one day this country is going to get steamrolled by some bootlicking country like, oh, I don't know, France, because all of the adults are too busy complaining about getting one scoop of ice cream instead of two. Of course, that's just my opinion. So right now, sit back, relax, and enjoy Suddenly, right here on Cleveland Classic Cinema.